This is the Lekker Rugby Pod, only on Megaphone Rugby.
Welcome to this pensive episode of the Lekker Rugby Pod. Harry and I had a quick meeting this morning and we decided what we're going to be talking about. Harry, firstly, welcome back in South Africa. You've got a proper zebra behind you. You look like you're chasing down the big five as well. How's it being back in South Africa, firstly?
It's such a joy, even with this current sports-driven misery. It's the worst sporting weekend for South Africa in ages. Great to see you. Had a lovely coffee by the fire. We could see the long view of the Waterkloof into the distance. Some bushfires burning, but the sun was back out. And it was one of those days where you have to remind yourself, we're still really blessed, fortunate people. Life will go on. This, in fact, is not life and death, it's sport. We've won well, we've won triumphantly, we've had all the glory in the world. So now when we lose, we have to do kind of what Rassie did, which was never seen a man more thoughtful, humble, considerate, even to the worst possible questions. Some of them were just lacked taste whatsoever. Others were great, like our friend Hendrik Cronje, who made fun of me and announced that I was the Jonah. I was the reason why the loss happened to the whole press room. But it was good fun. He was just having a good time with me. No, it's one of those days where you got to think, and I think it's difficult to unpack, which is why we didn't go last night. I think it would have been maybe a bit knee-jerk and might have lacked some tempering. For example, looking at some stuff again, I mean, when you're live, like I was right there, down low, third row, it's very difficult to see what James O'Connor is doing. He's hidden behind the big guys. But overall, I would say, even with that being one of the worst losses and most embarrassing losses, shameful losses in Bok history, it ranks up there. There were lots of parts of the night that I really did like. The people I got to meet, the situations, even being on the pitch itself, and noticing that the conditions were actually a factor. I don't know, it doesn't really come across in TV, but that little dusting of water really assisted the 22-0. The ball was really difficult to handle, and it was a night to put the ball up in the air and chase. So yeah, I know we'll get into all the reasons why, but I don't want to lose sight of the fact of the good, which is it's wonderful to be here. Really enjoyed the people coming up to, even at the game, probably, I mean, I'm talking at least 100 people noticing, coming over and saying hi. Some people kind of shy, some people much more aggressive, all good. So thanks.
Before we get to the rugby, I just want to, highlight a couple of things you just said there. Number one, you said you were on the pitch. You were there illegally so. Typically, Harry, you barged in where angels fear to tread, and then you were actually rewarded for your bad behavior. I mean, I'm sure SA Rugby is wondering what the hell did they do giving you press accreditation for this?
They let the madman, the fox in the henhouse. No, listen, I saw people walking around on the pitch and they had the same thing I had, I thought. So I was like, well, what if I do this? And our friend Ringo egging me on, like, go, do it. Just go. I just literally walked in. I requested, I said, am I good? And, with a big smile, it may have helped that I hugged everyone, including the security guards. He was a nice guy. And so, yeah, there I was walking around, right next to Skull Burger and, the box, I mean, the actual bench, the warm-ups. Eben was doing his stretches about, I could touch him. So I just hung out, and then I just started reporting on the rain, on the fact that the guys were covering up the cameras. It seemed like to me that they knew something. They watched the radar, and just the joy of it. Actually being able to see from pitch back out or back up. The glory of a more of a transformed South African public, the fan base, a lot more women, a lot more young people, I would say, as well. And even with all the pricing furor, the West Side was packed. And it was packed. If you were Australian or Wallaby and looking at anthems, you would have just seen a sea of people. And then at some point, yeah, Cindy corralled me and said, "What are you doing here?" And very nicely, graciously took me through the proper channels, back through the media, which allowed me to bump into Sasha and hang out with some people. So in the end, it all worked out. I went back to my seat and then was able to, at the end of the match, wind my way up to the press box again, and then have one of the most uncomfortable press conferences that I will ever be in, just to watch a crestfallen, dejected, angry at self, Sia Khaleesi, and an apologetic, open to fixes, almost like Rassie was like, "Hey, help a brother out. Maybe you have some ideas." And it wasn't Rassie the know-it-all saying, "I know what's best." It was more, "Oof, we got that wrong."
Just wanted to say thank you to Sandy and SA Rugby for helping you with the accreditation. That was quite a coup for us. So I was wondering about, letting you loose in that press conference. So you talked about the funereal atmosphere almost, and Hendrik Cornelius, our friend Hendrik Cornelius, let's make that quite clear, saying that the loss was due to you being allowed in there. So that was quite funny to me. But again, like I said, I was wondering how Rassie was going to react. Let's talk about that press conference first. You were at the press conference last year at the game between Australia and New Zealand. This time, the Boks were 9 weeks together, on a high, announced his team a week early. I also want to say a lot of hubris, maybe I'm mistaken, and then, having to come down to earth a little bit and go face the music. What are your impressions there of that entire... You talked about Rassie being open to things, but it's still, for someone who was so confident on Monday, to lose this badly on Saturday, how did he handle it?
I thought he handled it very well. If I was giving a client advice on how to handle a scandal or something really, really negative, I would tell someone to do it just like Rassie did. He came in, no fanfare. He sat down on his seat. There's about 5 rows of journos, a lot of cameras set up, a lot of microphones and little, phone stands. He settled in. He had a ball cap on, the right direction, like Jake White likes. Um, his arms were open. He was not defensive in his crouch. His body language suggested that he was hearing people. He came in with an idea already about what went wrong, but he let people quiz him 1,000 different ways on what went wrong, and sound cute and clever. And he didn't come back. He wasn't spiteful. He wasn't sarcastic, which is sometimes his go-to. He was thoughtful. He was, what's the right word? Chastened. Like one of your kids that gets caught something and something happens and they had the right attitude, and your heart breaks when you are punishing them. You actually don't want to punish them anymore because you realize, no, they got it. He definitely got it. And I think the overarching thing I got from it, not that he said these words exactly, but in his demeanor and how the time he took with us, the patience he had with absurd questions. There were also really good questions, but there were some that were just beyond the pale. The patience he had with that, it suggested to me that he recognized something. There was recognition. And the recognition that I think he had is the same recognition that I think I had in the aftermath. Is I don't think I had enough respect. I think Rassie failed to give proper respect to, even though the lip service was made, Joe Schmidt's a fine coach, the Wallabies just played the Lions, they're battle hardened. We were still expecting a festival of rugby. And we applauded the selection that lent itself to quick rugby, wide rugby, which means that you have to clean a lot of rucks. I mean, there was no rucks for a while, but at some point the rucks started required. And we didn't have ruck cleaners. We didn't have breakdown artists. We didn't have someone to come off the bench that could have, changed things. So I think Rassie was basically saying, tacitly, I think is the word you say, where you admit something without saying it. We got it wrong in that we didn't respect our opposition enough. I'm not saying we didn't respect them at all, but not enough. And that one thing drove everything else. So we'll work our way through all the other whys, but they all come back to that one thing, that if it were the All Blacks coming to Ellis Park, same occasion, we would have picked a different team. We would have picked a different tactic. We would have picked a different vibe. We would have had a different cadence to the game. We would have had different selection to start, different selection to finish. and we wouldn't have named our team maybe a whole week early. It just would have been different. And I think when he said we got it wrong, that was the main point he was making. The other thing that I would suggest is it seemed like, and this is something Rassie has an acute awareness of, is that we didn't have respect for our own style, our own DNA, our own player set. So if we pick a certain style, but then we have Louet the Arthur as our guy there, then respect Louet. Don't say, hey, Louet, what we're going to do is do ballet for a while, but, on speed, and then go, how's it looking? And, Louet's like, I hate this. This is not my game. But if you give me a proper power platform, I'm probably going to be all right, because they diffused Will Skelton quite easily. He was not a bully. He was a domesticated bully, right? He was fine. That wasn't what happened. What happened was we played wide to wide. We played as if we were losing when we were winning. We didn't have any gear shift. We were coming down a hill, but still in top gear. And it didn't make any sense. So I again trace that back to a lack of respect. Respect the score, respect the tradition of when you're up 22-0, bury them. How do you bury them? Well, you don't act like it's 0-22. You act like it's 22-0. You eat up time. You take 20 seconds here, 30 seconds there of nothing happening. You kind of say, I don't know if we're going to score that much more, but you're not going to score anything. Then you win 27-6 or 27-9. I think that lack of respect was making Rassie uncomfortable, and he handled the discomfort really well, which is he took time. He wasn't in a rush. He never cut anyone short, no matter how many circles there were in their questions. He went methodically, and each time he came back to himself and to his fellow coaches and said, but that's where the buck stops here. Yes, it's true that he also talked about we might have to change our pre-selected Cape Town team. And by that, I read into that we're going to change what we were going to do. So by interpretation, we now know that they thought they could put 45 or 50 in the Wallabies at Ellis Park with a speed team, and then they could do a grind down power, relief. That also, we're going to get into what they did before this, the training, the heavy training, but it might have been wrong on so many levels. It might have been wrong because the players were dead-legged from training. It might have been wrong because you first take care of business on a slightly wet, high felt, unusual winter evening. Just take care of business first. Then you can go down to Cape Town, even if it's heavier there, but you can still play like we did against the Barbars and let the air out the ball. So I think, yeah, my first point is there was a lack of respect and a telling awareness of that by Rassie, and a promise, an implicit promise that we're not going to do that again, and we're going to fix these things. And then you and I can sort of debate about how much you can fix in a week, of course.
Yeah, we'll do that after the team's been announced. We don't know when that's going to be. It's going to be on Thursday this time. We don't know. What I wanted to ask you was, it was a game of specific, let's say 2 halves, but there was a specific moment where 22-0 up, and then suddenly everything changed. So we'll get to that just now. I wanted to ask you, the lack of experience, Mani, Fassi, the like 20 caps each or something like that, the risk almost of playing to the crowd kind of a thing. Oh, we like being, cheered and clapped, and we're doing this, and we're doing looking all sexy, and they're not knowing when to go back to the basics, doing things the proper way, slowing things down, going down the middle, going to the forwards. Is that a lack of respect, maybe, or arrogance? What do you attribute that? Because we kept trying to do the same thing, and it didn't work, and nobody had the news or the knowledge or the experience, for that matter, to say, "Whoa, guys, we're doing the wrong thing. Let's do this. Let's go back to something more basic." What's the story there?
I hesitate to put the lack of respect tag on the players themselves. I suspect that that's more from us, from me, from Rassie, from the wider group. But I think the players themselves would have been given pretty clear instructions. And I don't know why you would pick Fassi, Lubbock, Williams, with Willemse as your as your parachute guy, if you were not telling them probably go crazy guys, be free. And I think if you tell Mani be free, then you're gonna have the responsibility at some point to shift that. And I agree with you. It wasn't really a tale of two halves. It was more like three stanzas. It was almost like the game was divided into thirds. And the first third was play quick, but there was still the kicking was the foundation, and the kicking was working. I ran into Laurie Fisher, who's the defensive coach for the Wallabies, in a stairwell post match, and we know each other, and he said we had no answer to you guys. We had no response. If you kept doing that, we actually didn't know what to do. Like if you just kept putting up perfectly weighted kicks by Williams, not off money, they were from Williams. And then, Tom Wright cannot corral them, or he gets beaten to the punch by Kurtley Arendse, or Eben Etzebeth was doing great kick chase. If that had continued, there was every sign to them that they were going to be put to the torch and be down 35-0 at the half, and then maybe, end up losing 42-10, 42-15, kind of how I saw the game going. But mysteriously, at the end of that first stanza, when you have Dylan Peach running in for a wide try, and then the Boks come down knocking at the door to try to score, from that point to about 20 minutes into the second half, there's just nothing. It's running into walls, no plan B, and no ability to shift. So I would almost look at it as this: there was a thing that was that was planned. It was working. It fit the conditions. It fit kick chase. Speed is so devastating when you kick chase. Eben's a lot quicker than Will Skelton. Peter Steff's a lot quicker than Tom Hooper. Sia is a quick 8 compared to Harry Wilson. So there was all that speed, but then you use it with the kick chase. What you don't do is put all that onto an island somewhere far away, wide, with no ruck resource, no ability to come clean. Phase 4. Bridge passes that are not even necessary. So that second phase stanza is where the Boks play while they're leading as if they're trailing. And this is where that old, calm voice you need to come in. And who was it? Fassi's on 20 caps. Mani's on an intermittent 20 caps. It's been breaks. And he hasn't always had the ship for a while. So, he has no confidence there. Rassie referred to a lack of confidence in both Willemse and Fassi. So you have these guys up against a shaky James O'Connor who hadn't played very much, but he grew into the game because he's been playing at a top level for 15 years. I mean, he's the guy who kicked us out in 2011 at the Cape Town. So just think of all the battle scars he had and what he's seeing. Nick White, realizing that he was going to get charged down, so he recalibrates his exit kick. My howitzer gets shifted down. He exits easy. Tom Wright, been around for a while. So all three of those guys started out a bit shaky and then got more solid. So by that middle stanza, they were on all cylinders. And so they were scoring, post oranges. Then you have the final stanza where the Boks realize, and all of us in the stands, we're in a dogfight. It's 22-19. And then there seems to be no patience at all. And again, just putting a try on a platter for the Wallabies and then putting the game out of reach. So it's that middle stanza that worries the most. That first part, good. Go to the races, kick chase, quick ball, no ruck attack. There was a period of time where the Boks just didn't have any rucks. It was just the ball was so recycled that there was no time for a ruck. And so it didn't matter that there was not enough big, heavy cleaners coming on time. And then it mattered a lot because they got away from that. And then, as Rassie pointed out in the second half, 9 kicks out of hand. And most of those not even really well done. In the end, the Wallabies kicked 30 times in the match. And we were just pushing 20. And that wasn't enough, given that it was working. So my theme for that is incoherent selection, because if you're going to pick Mani and Fassi, then you better have something off the bench to be different. I was rethinking the bomb squad in my mind as a theology, and it was always about having something different. a change of pace. If you start out this way, then you could go this way. Reinforcements that gave you a different look. Here, I think there was no way to reshift. Once it started going horribly wrong, who could you bring on? Okay, so you could bring on Damian Willemse, who's pretty much going to be playing the same way Fassi did, with maybe a bigger boot. And so there wasn't enough of a difference there. When you looked at the forward pack, Franco Mostert, was he really going to be much of a difference maker in this game? Not really. Kwagga Smith, not going to run and dent holes there. Not a link man anymore. So I think in the end, there was no way to change it up once it started going wrong. So my suspicion is that they were given the green light. They took the green light, but it was a very specific green light. It was kick chase, recycle, no ruck ball or very quick ruck, put them to the sword, and then steer the match from 22-0. You should always be able to steer a match into an acceptable score around the hour mark. Then you bring in reinforcements that put the game to bed. And that's where it went all wrong. At 22-0, it seemed like the Boks were still convinced they had to push. And then at 22-12, they played like the game was, we were down by 20. And you're still up by 10 points. That's when you need to lengthen your intervals and you need to shrink time and make the clock an enemy for the Wallabies. That never happened. It never felt like there was enough tight through the gut, pick and go. Sia Kolisi picking and going was a thing until it wasn't a thing. There was plenty of space around the ruck. Pillar post, attack, move the ball, and then maybe run a drive out line, a drive off of a line out maul. Other thing is, on incoherent selection, one thing about the bomb squad, it always offered more locks. So you have locks and then you bring on more locks. The line out suffering, you kind of need a target. When you bring on Kwagga, you've brought on nothing on the line out. When you have Bongi and Banambi being selected, still, when he's had such a hard time, it puts all the pressure on Malcolm Marks, who used to be the bomb squad relief guy. And so there's all this kind of sacrifice, and I call it the coaching carousel, where we keep saying no one owns the jersey, and we can just shift people around, and it doesn't matter. This game cried out for someone to say, Andre Pollard is the incumbent. It's the first big test of the year. It's at our flagship stadium. It's at home. It's the cathedral. Let's win this thing proper. Then we play around. So that's where I'm going back to complacency, overconfidence, Vinchat, all of us guilty. But Rassie very quick to take that on. And I think he'll be different going forward.
Okay, Rassie took that on, but there's a lot of noises now being made about Tony Ball not working for the Springboks and everything. And Rassie pointed out that Tony actually said quite early in the game the Boks are actually overplaying themselves a little bit. And, doing things, you said no rucks and everything. That implies a lot of speed, a lot of running. And now then I'm coupling that now. Maybe it's a bit of a tortured analogy here, but they've been together. Rassie was at pains to point out they've been together for 9 weeks. And they went through this extreme fitness regime towards the end of it. So that overplaying, speed, no rucks, combined with that sort of physical, I want to call it almost excess, didn't that play a role a bit, that they just ran out of steam?
Yeah, I think, kick chase is very tiring. You get your big, you get your bouncer, you get your flyer, you have someone looking for scraps. So you're not doing one-man chases. You're doing 3 or 4. And it's repeat because you got to run back. Nick White was very good at returning kicks and putting it back. So in the end, you've got some guys like Kirby Arnser running a crazy amount of miles in the match. When you do that, it's not surprising that at the end of the game, when you're having to contain Suali'i and you try to run down Max Jorgensen, you have nothing. You have dead legs. So I feel that. I see what you're saying there. And I also know that Rassie's probably defending Tony Brown preemptively, knowing that the knives are out for Tony. So he's taking it on and saying, no, no, no. In response to that, in the Afrikaans section of the press conference, he took pains to say, whose skilt it was, and it wasn't him. It was like, no, Tony was the guy telling us that. That's probably true, but probably what he's not saying is before the match started at all and the selection patterns, Howard, Mani, and co not have thought that the game was to go speed, speed, speed. And so maybe this is where it goes wrong. When they got advantage in the first 25 minutes, they kicked again. It was the kick, the regain, one phase, and then kick over the top again into coffin corner. Now that's devastating, especially on a slick night where no one's sure exactly where the ball's going to go. What they got away from in the middle stanza was they were still doing that quick kick, chase, but then when they got ball midfield, they were swinging it out the back, going to Andre, not as a crash ball runner who set a ruck, but Andre was going out the back. Most of the time when he hit Fassi in flight, Fassi was already near the trams, and then he just kept stealing space, ran into Kurtley Arnse, taking away all his space, and then it would just grind down. And now you have a ruck 25 meters away from where you started, which means that Lewitt, Peter Steff, Sia are trucking along trying to get there. And then 5 seconds later, it's the other side of the field. So that's the part where I think Tony must have been yelling. But if you've told a guy like Monty Lubbock, who is a bit of a tunnel vision guy sometimes, this is how we're going to play free, be you. If that's what you get told for 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, then in the middle, the awareness is easier for a guy with 80 caps, 75 caps, skins under his belt, scars, understands. We can slow down and you just kind of huddle up and you say, guys, we're up 22-5. What are we doing? Why are we doing this? Let's get that ball into the coffin corner. Let's get to the corners. Let's kick. Let's keep chasing. At least when you're kick chasing, some of the team gets to stand around. But when we're going wide to wide to wide, Lewitt, Peter Steff, whoever, Marks has to go dead-legged and clean Will Skelton 20 meters away. I think that's the key issue there. The other thing is, why chase the game at all? The game was there on a platter. The Wallabies didn't have any answer to, a really strong carry up the middle with bullocking, carry your man, 2-3 guys. It happened over and over. Eben, Peter Steff, Andre, keep using that as a battering ram, and then get outside, double-sided attack. They didn't seem to be able to read that very well. Jesse had space when he had the ball out there, and then you can use your guys. The one thing is true about life is in rugby is you're never as tired when you're on the attack with the ball in hand as you are defending. And what happened was the Boks put themselves into a defensive mode by getting turned over at the breakdown. Then they have to march down to a Wallaby lineout, and then the Wallabies could launch. And now your dead legs feel much more dead when you're on defense. So it turned everyone into zombies. There is a great clip that you sent me that I put up on X in response to someone saying, I thought Lewitt looked good. Lewitt did look good for 25 minutes. Then he looked bad. And because of the composition of the bottom squad, there was no locks on the bench, no classic locks, and no piano movers like Kobus Visa, where, there's no way to just blast someone off with. Sosa's got, much older legs now. He's had a lot of scar tissue himself. Kwacha, Bongi, these guys are getting found out probably just in time to know what to do for 2027. And we don't know who it's going to be, by the way, because some guys, Eben is just a fit guy, man. He's just always going to be fit. Eats well, sleeps well, whatever he's doing is working. But that's not always true for everyone. And we have to be honest. I think we turned a guy like Lud into a zombie, and now it's funny to look at it, but I kind of feel sad as well, because obviously he's not trying to look like that. Obviously, he wanted to put on a good display at what used to be his home ground. And so I felt embarrassed. And I feel embarrassed even now talking about it.
All right. I want to talk about, you talk about Mani having an intermittent career, 20 caps or so, but on and off. And I think about a guy like Andre Pollard, Andre Pollard wouldn't hesitate to do what needs to be done, change the game plan, whatever else it might be. Do you not think that the fact that Marnie is such a divisive figure almost, you say something bad about Marnie, the trolls come down on you. You say something good about Marnie, the trolls come down on you. And then Marnie is the guy in the middle, being picked or yanked off the field in the semi-final in 30 minutes into the game. Yeah, not good for your self-confidence. Now you're putting him into a game where you tell him to run, and now it stops working. But what I'm trying to get at is he maybe not a little too unsure of himself or his position or whatever to dare change things and rather just keep doing what the coach has told me to do in the beginning. Again, there's a lack of confidence by not being backed and picked consistently. Is that a thing?
I think that's true. I wonder about Monty though, even if he were picked consistently for the Boks 50 caps or something. I wonder if he's the leader type. Like I wonder if he's the guy that can do that. I don't know. It strikes me that sometimes he lacks situational awareness in the moment. Like even the one he threw to Suali'i, I didn't understand exactly what the point was. I mean, even if it had been completed, I don't know where it would go. It's an extremely long way to go to clean a ruck. It was a 2-on-2-on-2. Everyone was matched up. There was a body for a body. It also was telegraphed. I think what a guy like Pollard brings, and I think a guy like Sasha could actually have if he gets a long run, is just reading skill and verbals and explaining to people what we're doing, making the right calls, telling people where we are. Reminder, we're 10 points up. The clock is our friend. If the game ends now, we win by 10. That means if in 10 minutes' time, we've scored 3 and they've scored 5, we're still up by 8, right? So you bleed the clock. I'm not saying you go into your shell. I don't think Andre does that. I don't think Dan Bigger does that. I don't think Owen Farrell does that. The great flops, they just know how to use the clock in the field to make it difficult to catch you. We're a front runner. The Boks have always been a good front runner team. Usually when we get out in front, we win. Up 22 at Ellis Park, you would say, I don't know what the statistics are, but it's got to be ridiculously, it might be 100% that Boks up 22 at Ellis Park, 20 plus at Ellis Park always win. But take it further, because it was actually 22-5 at Oranges. That percentage is and that's even more daunting. You only have this much time to go. And so that's where you start to say, as a fly-off, you just gather your guys, or even during the plays itself. You don't have to go out the back and then a bridge pass to nowhere to someone on an island, one-on-one, and say, good luck, Kirtley. I hope you can do it. You don't have to do that. Where were the diagonal grubbers, the kick-throughs that we saw that worked so well in this season so far, but also for 3 years now? 2023, that little kick through by Jesse Creel for the bouncing ball, and Cheston Colby's away. Damien Pinot cannot catch him. That's the kind of thing that it was crying out for. There were 3 occasions running right at me. Fassi has the ball. He's joined the line. He has two or three men on his outside, on his left, and he just starts to crab. If you just toe that through, skidding, sliding, what is Tom Wright going to do? Like, what is Max Stroger? All they're going to do is gather the ball and either go into touch, line out box, or they're going to scuff a kick, or max, like get held up. So there was just situational awareness where that beyond the fact that it's a line out box in the 22, if you kick through, it's 2 minutes gone. And you just need to eat clock, up 10. And then by the time it's 22-19, there's a sense now of panic and desperation. We looked small, we looked desperate, and we looked rushed. And I'm thinking, you're up by 3 at home. You have an ability to close this out. Something has to change for you to lose. They're the ones that should be pushing the game. They should throw an interception for you. And then Jesse Creel, you run it away and score. And then suddenly the game's gone. So there was just questionable management style. And we talked a lot through the season about scenario painting. Put yourself in a scenario, and in practice, you try to simulate that kind of experience, and you put a blowtorch on everyone, and then make the right call. Up 3, midfield, you get the ball, clean ball from scrum. What do? You do not throw a pass that could be taken to the house by Sueli. You just don't. You never do that. That's your only thing you never do. So I think that's the part where Mani, at club level and for country, I don't think he's ever shown a clear understanding of that. That's the part I don't see that it maybe ever gets there, or maybe we just haven't communicated well enough. But I think you can take Mani and put him in so many places, but a tight game with 20 minutes left, run the ship. I haven't seen it very many times.
Right. I want to get back to the 9 weeks. For a team that's been together for 9 weeks, the lineouts, the set pieces, but the lineouts especially, were woeful. What do you think the reason for that was? Malcolm Marx looked like he was tossing marshmallows or something. There was no sort of, proper throw there, and it was always a bit of a gamble. We're kicking for the corner to get the line out, and you're thinking, oh, maybe can we get this line out, kind of a thing. For 9 weeks together, this is a pretty poor performance. You know where I'm going with this. Everything should be like a well-oiled machine, a drilled machine, and it wasn't there. What's that about?
Yeah, and I don't want to discount how good the Wallabies line-out defense is. They put the lines under extreme pressure. Nick Frost is a really difficult operator to get around when Will Skelton lifts him. It's the 4-meter tower. Jeremy Williams can also bring a lot of pressure. So that's the uncontrollables. That's the other side. The controllables, though, you're exactly right. How do you not have a solid set piece? Scrum is solid. It probably was ascendant. Didn't get a lot of pay for it because, like you say, to get paid for a good scrum, you have to have a good line out. That's how you get to the next phase. And we let all the pressure off when we scuffed the line out. Line out's got so many moving parts. It's got the call itself, which is the first step. And the timing of that, the certainty of that, can also play into the throw, because the hooker that knows he likes the call and is ready for it, and it's the best one, they always seem to make a better throw. When maybe the hooker is like, I'm not really sure I like that call, then sometimes you get tentativeness. Then you have the throw, like you say, just the quality, the bulletness of it, but still easy to catch. Apex, probably not the yips. When you wait too long, I thought that Malcolm Marx was there a little bit too long sometimes before he threw. And each second that goes by, the more nervous you are, the more lactic acid creeps in, and the more stiff you look. The third thing is the movement itself on the way to the lift. The lift is going to be spot on, the timing of that. And then, of course, you have the arm fight and the catch itself, and bringing that ball safely down. Now, the Wallabies actually lost quite a few lineouts themselves, so there's some good stuff there on the defense, but there's not good on Bok ball. So when the Boks had a lineout, that should be banker. Early on, it was banker to Lewitt. At the front, if he's lifted right and the throw's there, he's got it. I mean, there's really no one who could actually beat Lewitt to a certain spot in the sky if he knows where he's going before you do. As the game wore on, in that middle stanza, it was shoddy. It was absolutely calamitous. Like, I thought every time we had a line out, I was feeling bad. I was thinking, well, maybe we shouldn't do it. Let's just kick into the air from a scrum penalty 1 and chase it. That's better than actually convening a line out, which is not a good place to be in. The good news, I suppose, is lineouts are the most fixable thing if you say you have 1 week to fix something. It's really hard to fix in 1 week if you have a bad scrum. So we don't have that problem. But lineouts got to be better. And I think sometimes you strip it all back. You keep your calls really simple. You go more to the front than the back. Your hookers are emboldened by having short, clear calls. They almost know the call before they get there, and they just get into their motion quickly and they do it. There's not a 2-3 second frozen statue. And just think of the line out as a starter, but not really this sort of elegant thing. Don't overcomplicate it until you get confident again. I think right now there's a bit of lack of confidence there permeating the lineouts.
All right, now we've analyzed sort of what went wrong. in depth, I think. But now you're talking about fixes. Lineout's easy to fix. How do they fix this? How do they turn this around in 1 week? What are the things they work on? So like you said, you can have 5 or 10 or 20 things to work on, but you can only realistically work on maybe 2. If you were Rassie today, you're not going to do an island thing from the World Cup because it wasn't the player's fault, not really. It was the coach's fault, if I'm not mistaken. You were Rassie today. What would your thinking be?
Okay, so 2 categories. One's going to be coach decision making, and one's going to be work-ons. The work-on is the line out is you drill. That's just a number of hours per day, and you can do that anywhere at any time. You can do that in a hotel room if you want. There's so much about lineouts that is just knowing exactly what you want to do, getting timing right, and executing. The second thing is the breakdown. The breakdown was a loss. The breakdown as a component. The long-term fix is to think about breakdown differently. We haven't been there at breakdown for a while. We've kind of said things like, well, we don't really need an open sider and out fetcher anymore. That's not how we do things. Everyone's a fetcher, but if everyone's a fetcher, no one's a fetcher. And so maybe there's a time, to work on that. That's long-term. The here and now, you can design your attack systems to be much closer to each other. So from ruck 1 to ruck 2 to ruck 3, you have 3 meters, 4 meters, maximum 7, and you look at multi-sided attack. You look at the center of the field. You really don't go from tran to tran. As sexy as it sounds, as cool as it looks, it always looks like something's going to happen. But in the end, it's like confusing motion with action. A lot of motion. Where's the action? So if your third ruck ends up farther behind where you started, but you had these long bridge passes and you had these skips, I mean, it just looks sexy. It makes the crowd ooh and ah, but you haven't got anywhere. So there's still a place for Marco van Staden to truck it up in the middle. But this is where we also lose sight of the fact that a specialist number 8 is still an important feature of rugby. It doesn't seem like it. It seems like you could just say anyone can play 8. But picture Eldritch Lowe up the gut with that quality ball that's 65%, 70% territory in the first. Just imagine him running through people, taking people with him. And that next ruck becomes even easier. Maybe it's a kick over, maybe it's another pick and go. Everything gets easier when you have that. So I'm not calling right now for Evan Ruiz, but I'm saying a guy like Evan Ruiz, maybe if you change his surname, so maybe we can just pretend that he has a different name, Rassie, and we'll call him Joe Blow, but he can still be Evan Ruiz. That could work. In their own kind of weird way, the Wallabies used Harry Wilson in that way, just right up the middle, run, because a proper 8's got speed, a proper 8 doesn't mind having the ball in space, and a proper 8 can just keep doing that all night. Jasper Wiese can just keep going all night. And it's kind of fun to say, but we don't have to do that. And we can put someone in there who hasn't played 8 at test ever. But then sometimes you look at the experiment and you say it didn't work. We saw that with Kwagga Smith against Ireland a year ago. So why are we still playing funny games with number 8? There are proper number 8s. And even if you take a makeshift 8 like Kobus Wiese, at least you get the hard edge and the size of someone just being a battering ram. So I think there's selections you can do. Other thing is, I kind of think, never have 2 wild guys or two disco operators at 10 and 15 at the same time. There's sort of that odd couple that you like with Andre and Willie, because you go, this guy will save the other guy from his worst instincts. And by the way, it works in reverse as well, because maybe sometimes Andre is going to be too conservative. So maybe you always have that. You always have an ability on your bench with selection and starting at 10, 15, that you've got your trigger man and you've got your your peacemaker. Let's calm it down, and then okay, now let's have a vibe. We had so many vibe guys out there with Fassi, Mani, Willemse that it just seemed like there was no one to say, why are we doing this? We're up by 10 points. We're at home. The field's a bit wet. How about skidding diagonals? How about, we keep doing what made us up 22-0? I think that's the part, the voice, the respected voice that's credible. I've got enough games, enough wins, enough everything that you'll listen to me. I felt like the touch line, the sideline energy was a bit frantic. I mean, Felix Jones coming out of his skin, Dwayne screaming at people to kick it out to the 5 instead of take the 3. There was a lot of frenetic energy, and I was wondering where that came from. Like this was a night to acknowledge that you made a really good start and consolidate that. You know, it's like having a salient in battle. You get to bulge and you get cut off by the enemy. Why don't you just keep marching forward one step at a time and then realize at some point you are going to win this match if you keep doing what you're doing? They have no response. They didn't know how to defuse those bombs and just keep the bombs flying. I don't know why we stopped.
Right, this is a South African podcast, which is why we focus on the Springboks. But I mean, in the interest of fairness, let's just give kudos to Australia. Just briefly, what did Australia do right? And how does that, the Lions tour, the games against the Lions, what does it put a bit different perspective on Australia's performance then and yesterday?
Oh, when Australia's at its best, post the time they used to be number one in the world, but let's say for the whole time when they weren't number one anymore. So this is the 21st century version. When they're good, they're great wins. Pocock winning at the Cape Tin, even their narrow losses, like a year ago in Ireland, just holding Ireland down to this tiny little score. They are just warriors. They have a tough mentality. They roll with the punches. They don't give up. They don't hang their head. They stay relevant. They can they can defend without infringing. So the Wallabies were pinged 3 or 4 times, 3 or 4 penalties only in the whole match. They were in there 22. They were stuck in there. They lost the game against the Lions at Melbourne because they didn't defend well in the final 8 minutes of the first half. This time they won because down 22-5, the Boks had the ball and they were inside the 22 and they were hammering on the door. And the Wallabies just refused to lose. They just wouldn't let anything in. If that had gone to 29-5, who knows what would have happened? But I just know that 29-5 is very different from 22-5, strangely enough. But they didn't hang their head. They kept fighting. Number two, they really are good breakdown practitioners. They understand the breakdown. They understand where to go. They don't have good first up defense. They let far too many meters go by, but they always bank on their ability to get a McWright or Tizano over the ball. And they do. They get over the ball. So they noticed, I think, in that phase that we were not sending ruck cleaners, and they capitalized on that. And probably at Oranges, Joe and his coaches probably said, we can even do better on defense. But wait, be patient because you'll get the ball. We're going to get the ball more than we had before. Third thing is the Wallabies were ready. They were ready when the ball bounced free and squirted out, or they suddenly got it. They put their head down and they ran. And they put their head down and ran so quickly. When they looked around, there was only 2 guys left, and one of them was a Wallaby. Every time. And then you get to the dead legs issue. Listen, I think that goes back to the dead legs issue, comes back to a lack of respect because you're timing yourself for Eden Park. And you're saying, listen, we don't have to worry that much about the Wallabies. So let's dead leg ourselves right now, bank those, and then the taper later, and then we'll be so fit for Eden Park. But the Wallabies came now, and they were already fit.
Yeah.
And they just kind of just battled and battled and battled. And once it was obvious that we had turned our big guys into zombies, they were ready because all the holes opened. And in those breakaway tries, you see some forwards outrunning backs. There was just some pictures you're not used to seeing.
When I realized the dead legs was a thing was when Sualili just left Gertly Arendse for dead. I mean, that says something. Nobody catches Gertly Arendse. Harry, last thing, you're good friends with Harry Wilson. I know he was a bit dejected after that, serious loss against the Lions. How did you feel after last night's win?
Yeah, I think there's also a captaincy issue there. Harry Wilson is not always seen by the Australian public as the best player. At number 8, Rob Ballatini is probably the better out and out carry, clean, tackle monster. But Harry Wilson's got an ineffable quality that's hard to put your finger on, but you recognize it when you see it. Someone who can command a room, who can bring a room along with him, make you believe when you're tired, and he just bleeds gold. And he's forever an Aussie boy. He's just one of those guys that you like. He's a nice guy. He's an interesting guy, but also when he's in the fight, he's all in. And he knows his limitations, but he doesn't seem to care about them. He just takes it on. I'm not even sure they use Harry Wilson correctly sometimes, but he was on full display. And I think without questioning anyone's history and what they've done in 2019 and 2023, I do wonder sometimes how that's going and whether there's some refreshment. You always have to refresh as a coach, as a team, when you're the hunted, when you're the one everyone's chasing. So I don't know. There's some parts of that where I just wondered. Sia Khaleesi in the press conference said something very revealing and I thought quite honest and therefore courageous. Someone said, were you trained out? Were you tired? And he said, no, we were fit. I was fit. We were fit. At the end, we were still, able to run. So let's just take that as, we'll just say that that's true. And then he said, what takes it out of you is when you try something and you fail, when you get thwarted, when someone steals your line out, when you are attacking and you get turned over. I found that very revealing because actually I take that as true, that he felt that way. I wonder, a lot of times captaincy in a collision sport is about self-delusion and pretending that you don't feel tired and telling everyone that they can go an extra mile, running over broken glass, that kind of thing. I've seen that before with Sia. I thought maybe he was one of the best captaincy-orientated picks that I've ever seen. A guy who can just rally a team and make you just go into that really dark place where you're doing things that really hurt. I wonder right now, actually, about this going all the way to 2027. I wonder about that. Maybe by 2027, you'd need something different there. Maybe it's a group, maybe it's a new and shining light. But I just wondered about the sort of honest resignation, if that makes sense. And I felt like Rassie was saying that. In other words, he was saying, I'm really mad about A, B, and C, but what I'm really pissed about is that we capitulated, that we gave in, that we were meek, that we were mild, we were like toast with nothing on it. I think that's what Rassie was saying, kind of to himself, but also to the guy next to him at the podium. And I don't think Rassie's going to be yelling at guys and saying, you lied. I think it's more introspective. But I think for sure on selection going forward, it's going to be a little bit more about, are you willing to die for this cause? Will you go the extra mile? Do you give up too easily? Is that fight gone because you have the money, you have the titles, you have the cups, you have all that stuff? Let's be honest. It's very difficult to get yourself into a maniacal aggression state when you have the nice place and everything's good. I know I'm guilty of that. Do I really want to fight in the mud for a knife with someone I don't know? Nah, just go home, by the fire with a blanket. So we all come to that phase, and I think this is an interesting but also uncomfortable phase where we're trying to figure that out. Is Lewitt, is Franco, is Kwagga, is Bongi, is Sia? Like, where are they going next? What does it look like?
Yeah, I think it's time to speak to either analyst Gus or John Cardinelli or both of them. Time for a depth chart again, don't you think?
Yeah, there was definitely some movement on the depth chart. I put out something of like Boks stocks rising, and some of the risers were the ones who didn't play. That's life. But I do have some severe question marks now about just the physical capacity of going back to the well. How many times can you go back to the well before your body goes, no, let's just sit here. It's okay, we're fine now. And the other thing is, I think there's certain combinations that I don't love together. Now, the only way you find out about combinations is you put them together and you see. So, just using Andre Esterhuizen correctly. What a talent! What a physical specimen, and how well he can dent the line. But if his primary purpose is to play like Luata Jager, which is out the back as a pod pivot, that's not really using him correctly. He's a, Jean de Villiers, set your first ruck target. Big 12, get over the line. Because you're so big and powerful, you don't have to have loosies and props and locks come clean for you. You can do it yourself. Your presentment's good. I didn't see enough Andre on the floor where he's setting the ruck target. Only one cleaner required because he's so big and strong, busting people. I saw a few, but not enough. So I thought that was interesting. And I know that Damien Delende had a niggle, but I think be careful with combinations like a Mani Andre. Does it work? What is that? How does it work? There was sometimes it felt like Andre and Jesse wasn't really a thing either. So, I think that's what Rassie was referring to when he said we got it wrong.
Yeah. Last thing, I asked Rassie on, I said last before, but it just popped into my mind. I asked Rassie at the press conference, how concerned are they about staying number one in the world, and and especially towards with the eye on the draw at the end of the year, the World Cup draw. Now, I know you have to drop below 6 because there are 6 groups to really, to have any effect on you. But we just dropped to number 3. I mean, that's a big drop. I'm not sure what the permutations are, how far we can drop. But, I mean, one game we dropped from number 1. We dropped 3 points. Australia gained 3 points. Suddenly, it's a different picture there.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I mean, the French didn't do us any favors by sending a C team to New Zealand, giving New Zealand a sweep. And that actually made New Zealand really, really close to us. But we lost this game on our own steam, so we're not really able to complain about that right now. That's why the Harry Index is better, because the Harry Index would say, you're not going to give New Zealand all those points for beating the French team that didn't have their top 15 players. That's the first piece. Second piece is you get rewarded inordinately, disproportionately when you beat someone away from home. So the point is you have to win in Cape Town. You just made yourself, a tough bed to lie in, which is no more home losses, because the home losses is what just kills you when you're number one. You can only go down, and you can go up only in the sense of padding your margin. So we would have padded our margin if we beat the Wallabies by a little tiny bit. I still think we were going to lose number 1 anyway, under the permutations because of that French thing I'm talking about. And also Australia rose because Scotland didn't have their best players, and then they lost on their July tours. So it also was kind of weird. Argentina and Scotland fell. And so that's kind of odd. Look, this can all be cured by one thing, or 2 things. 3. Win in Eden Park, win in Dublin, win in Paris.
Yeah.
And take care of business at home. Yeah, that's it. And so everything it's almost like you can get into permutation fever. But one thing I know, you keep winning, you always win at home, and you take care of business against those 3 guys, or get 2 of those 3, your ranking's fine.
Well, I'd love to spend another hour talking to you, and I've already spent an hour talking to you this morning before we recorded this podcast, so it was a bit of a luxury for me. Thanks, Harry. Let me get this thing out. People are waiting. They're baying at the door. Where's our pod today? So let me get it out. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
This is the Lekker Rugby Pod, only on Megaphone Rugby.